Saints, I recently had that message concerning that the Father chose you. You were chosen. God predestined you. And as I was preparing for something else to make this next video, this next message about something else, the Lord started opening this up even more to me, and I couldn't believe it. And I want to share this with you. And these things are so important. Like I said, I live in a wilderness area. I thank God that I can share these videos, but I just have so little people to get to. And I don't know how to do these things. Like I said, I don't even have a cell phone, but these things are so important. Subscribe and share it with others that we can share these things. And then you become the voice of that one crying in the wilderness to repent and prepare the way of the Lord. But I had that message previously concerning that we were chosen. And we saw in Ephesians 1, starting in, let's read 4 and 5. Just as He, the Father, just as He chose us in Him before the foundation of the world. Saints, we saw that the Father chose us in Him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before Him. And in verse 5, He predestined us. It means He predetermined that we would be His. He chose us. He predetermined. He predestined us to adoption as sons through the Lord. He did this. And as I said, all these things that the Lord is showing me come through where He told me the end times in the book of Revelation was to enter that small gate and stay on that narrow way, which is Christ Himself. And then those end times and these things would be this glorious revelation of the Son of God. And He showed me how those who enter the wide gate and are on the broad road to destruction, all they see is death and destruction. But there's glory in these end times. There's glory in the book of Revelation. And I told you that in Revelation chapter 5:1, that one who's sitting on the throne holding that scroll that's sealed up, it's the Father sitting on the throne. That scroll has our names. It's not the beginning of the tribulation that Christ is coming and going to start raining hell upon people. He rose up to pay the debt, to break the seals. Those were the ones chosen by the Father, but they've sinned and they need that debt paid. And that's what we see there. And in Ephesians, here in chapter 1, 4, and 5, we see where He chose us. And then I was reading something else. And look at this, saints. It's so important. Listen to these things. He chose us. And in Romans again, chapter 9, let's read where we didn't read because He opened this up more to me. Romans 9, starting in verse 18 then. So then, He has mercy on whom He desires. It's talking about God. It's talking about the Father. And Paul's saying, so then He has mercy on whom He desires. And listen here, saints. And He hardens whom He desires. This is in the Bible. You're taught like you're just going to decide to follow Christ, or you're going to become a Christian, or you're going to pick out a denomination or something. God chooses you, or it's religion. Religion is man trying to please God. God's not pleased with man. He's pleased in the finished work of His Son. And it says then, so then He has mercy on whom He desires. And also it says He hardens whom He desires. You will say to me then, why does He still find fault? For who resists His will? If He does this, if He chose us, who finds fault? I told you that He chose you. Your choice is, are you going to follow Him? Are you going to walk with Him? Are you going to build upon the kingdom of heaven? Or are you just going to take that free gift, enjoy the world, and then see what's in heaven, if anything, for you when you get there? Your choice is what you do with that eternal life He gave you. You will say to me then, why does He still find fault? For who resists His will? On the contrary, listen here, saints, on the contrary, who are you, O man, who answers back to God? The thing molded will not say to the molder, Why did you make me like this, will it? It's God's choice. He's got vessels. He's making them for what he wants. And he chose us, and you should be so honored, so humbled, so broken down, so ready to lay down your life to be crucified with Christ. Verse 21, or does not the potter have a right over the clay to make from the same lump? Listen, doesn't God have a right to make over the clay over these human beings from the same lump? One for honorable use and another for common use. God chooses, God decides. And look at verse 22. What if God, although willing to demonstrate his wrath and to make his power known, endured with much patience vessels of wrath? You can't tell God what to do, and he has chosen you. Be humbled and honored, because he says he also chooses some, and what does it say? Endured with much patience for vessels of wrath, prepared for destruction. And verse 23, saints, here, look at what he's going to say. Come on, get with me, understand. Ask the Lord to open up your eyes. Verse 23, and he did so in order that he might make known the riches of his glory upon vessels of mercy. He did this so he could show his mercy and glory upon us that he has chosen, that he chose. Not us, he chose us. You couldn't find an invisible, unknowable, unsearchable God. He has to reveal himself to you. He chose you, and he's revealing himself to you. But look what it says next, saints, and I got to go through this whole verse again. And he did so in order that he might make known the riches of his glory upon vessels of mercy, those he shows mercy to. Listen, which he prepared beforehand for glory. He prepared beforehand. Again, he chose us. He chose these vessels of mercy. If you know him and you walk with him, you were chosen. The Father has chosen you for a vessel of mercy that he might show his glory to. And then this all started because I was looking in Matthew chapter 20 about this landowner who is sending people into the field to work. I can't go over this whole thing now, but I'm going to start with just telling you, you know the parable. It's the parable where he goes out and sends people into the field to work. Some early in the morning, some later in the morning, some at noon, some 2 in the afternoon, some 3 in the afternoon, some at the last hour. And he tells them all, I'll give you a denarius. He tells the first one, I'll give you a denarius. I'll give you this certain amount of pay if you'll work in the field all day. And so they happily go out to work for that. And others are coming in later and later and later, until you get down to the ones that just come in at the last hour. And at the end of the day, when they're about to get paid, the ones that have been working all day certainly think, well, we're certainly going to get a bigger pay. There's going to be more for us. But when he starts paying out, and let's look at start with verse 8, Matthew 20, verse 8. And when the evening had come, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last group to the first. So he goes to pay the ones that started in the last hour. He says, pay them first. And he gives them their denarius, their pay. And as he's getting closer to the ones that been there all day, they're saying, hey, wait, we're going to get a lot more. Man, he gave them that same thing he promised us. We've been here all day. And in verse 9, and when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. And when those hired first, they thought that they would receive more. And they also received each one denarius. And when they received it, they grumbled at the landowner, saying, these last men who have worked only an hour and you have made them equal to us, who have borne the burden and the scorching heat all day long. They're coming and they're saying, you paid them the same. Now you're coming to us, we've been here all day. You gave them, in our terms, you gave them $100, and you're giving us $100? It's not fair. They're mad. But he answered and said to one of them, friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what is yours and go your way. But I wish to give to the last man the same as to you. Is it not lawful for me to do so, what I wish with what is mine? Or is your eye envious because I am generous? Thus the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Is God saying no matter, there's Christians that maybe they went right into the field and they've been working for God for 40 years, and they've been serving God with all their heart, that they're going to get the same reward if somebody comes along and says, yeah, I became a Christian 40 years ago, but I didn't care. I mean, I'm just glad to be saved. I don't even want to hear about it. And then just before the rapture or the tribulation or they die, they say, oh, let me put in an hour here. Let me put in a couple days. I better do something for God. And they get the same reward. It has nothing to do with that. God's righteous. God's true. You're going to get rewarded for everything you did. So what's he showing us here? I was seeing this and I saw what he was saying. But before I say that, let's go on and move up. Because this is just before, this is one of the last things, one of the last parables, one of the later teachings, just before he's headed on his way to Jerusalem. So why is he bringing this up here? In the same chapter, Matthew 20, let's go to verse 21 first. This woman is asked that her two sons can sit on his right and left side. And in verse 21, and he said to her, what do you wish? And she said to him, command that in your kingdom these two sons of mine may sit, one on your right and one on your left. But Yeshua, Jesus, answered and said to her, you do not know what you are asking for. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink? And they, these two sons of hers, they said to him, we're able, we can do it. Yeah, we got it right. We can make our way there. We'll drink the same thing like it's up to them. We'll sit right there next to you. We'll pay the highest price. That's what it would seem like. Maybe you do have a choice to do that. You can work yourself to that place. But look what he said in verse 23. He said to them, my cup you shall drink. If you're his and you're chosen by the Father, you will drink of that cup to some extent. But to sit on my right and my left, this is not mine to give. He said, to your position in the kingdom of God, it's not mine to give. Listen what he's saying here, saints. This amazed me. It's another revelation today. I couldn't believe it. He says, but to sit on my right and on my left, this is not mine to give. Listen, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father. He says your position in the kingdom of heaven. God chose you for salvation. But your position in the kingdom of heaven is God's work. The Father's preparing you. Those prepared by the Father. It's that place. So what's he saying in this parable? Here's another thing, but keep that in mind, saints. Even these things, your position, your place in the Father's already been prepared by the Father. He prepared it. He makes it. He chose you. But what do we see then in this parable of those going into the field to work? The more you work and the more you do and the more you build upon that temple with gold, silver, and precious stones, the more reward you're going to have. So what's he saying here? That no matter what time you went into the field, you get the same exact thing as those that have been in the field longer. Just before he's going to Jerusalem to present himself a living sacrifice. What it's saying, saints, is in these last days, in that pre-tribulation rapture, you can come at the last minute and you can still partake in, be a part of, be caught up in that pre-tribulation rapture. No matter if you come in the last hours, but you wholeheartedly and fully see these things, and it's revealed to you by God, you can be caught up in that pre-tribulation rapture. You don't have to say, well, I think it's really soon. And a lot of people have been working at this for weeks, months, years, decades. I'm just getting here. How could I be ready to go to the wedding feast with the groom at his father's house? And then they shut the door, and you know all those parables about the end times. Then the door is shut and nobody else can get in. It's not those went to heaven and all the others go to hell. They went to the wedding feast. You can come to the wedding feast, whether it's the last hour. That's what I'm telling you, saints. That's what he showed me today. This is the last days. And you can say, oh, I just found out. I'm coming to the field late. Pour your heart out to him. Be crucified with Christ. Give this life up. Give this religion where you think you can please God by religious services. Give that attitude up. I'm not telling you can't go to your church. Go there for fellowship. Go there whatever you want. But don't make it religion. Serve the living God. Lay down your life. Be crucified with Christ. And you too can be caught up in the pre-tribulation rapture. Even in the last hours as you enter the field. Because he saw him there and he said, why aren't you working? And the man said, nobody asked me to go to work. You might be sitting here and hearing this. Maybe the pre-tribulation rapture is going to be in a week. And you say, well, nobody told me. I didn't know. No, I never even heard about this pre-tribulation first fruits rapture of those going to the wedding feast before the marriage supper. I never heard of it. Now there's so little time left. You can enter the field. You can lay down your life. You can be crucified with Christ. You can walk in the Spirit, walk with him, walk with God as Enoch did, and you too will be caught up in the pre-tribulation rapture, and you will be taken with the groom to the groom's house, to his father's house, where he will have a meal prepared for you. The door will be shut. The others can't get in. It's not that they're going to hell or lost their salvation. They're not prepared. They're not ready. They're the bride of Christ and they're not ready. And they will be getting themselves ready because the wedding will be shortly after that. When the Father says, go get the bride, and the bride has made herself ready, as it says in Revelation. She made herself ready. She was prepared. The door is closed. And those that go to the wedding feast, after that, nobody else can come in. That's when he comes as a thief in the night. That's when he comes when you don't expect it. The church of Laodicea that goes into the tribulation, or those that get saved in the tribulation, they know he's coming, no matter what they think or teach you at that time. It's no more than 7 years. But for those Gentiles, those that went into the tribulation, those that are preaching the gospel around the world, it'll be within 3.5 years. So you know you don't got much time. The world is falling apart around you. And you can and will be prepared, dressed, and ready for the marriage supper, which is the marriage. But he will take his friends first. He will take his friends, those watching, waiting, prepared, their lamps are lit. He will take them to his Father's house. The door will be shut. And he will serve them, saints. He will serve you. And it doesn't matter what hour it is, how late you come into this, how late you find out about this. You can come in it on the last hours, and God will prepare you. And God will have chosen you. Like it said there in verse 23. But it is not for those for whom it has been prepared. He said there in verse 23, let's end with that again. He said to them, my cup you shall drink, but to sit on my right and my left, this is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father. Once again, you've been chosen. God has chosen people to go in that pre-tribulation rapture to that marriage supper. But as you see in some of those other parables, lots, I took a wife, I just started a business, I got to bury my father. They got everything else to do. So he's out looking for you. He's waiting for you. He predestined you. He prepared for you to be there. Be there. And be the voice of one crying in the wilderness.